In 2014, China promised to stop harvesting organs from executed prisoners, but it has said for many years that it would end the controversial practice. Death row inmates have long served as a key source of transplants. But the author of one report says members of the Falun Gong practitioners are targeted as views conflict with the ruling Chinese Communist Party. David Matus is the co-author of a report into allegations of organ harvesting of Falun Gong practitioners in China. He's here in studio with me. You're very welcome. You've been speaking to the Philosophical Society in Trinity College this afternoon. There is, I suppose, an urban myth about someone having too much to drink in a foreign country, having their drinks spiked, and then they wake up with a surgical wound on their abdomen and a warning note to ring an ambulance because one of their organs has been taken from them. Is that myth anything like the truth of what happens?
No, not in China. In China, the people who are being killed for their organs are, first of all, prisoners, and they're often prisoners for a long time. They're a particularly targeted group, and what's more, it's all state-run. It's the official hospitals, it's institutionalized, and the numbers are huge. We estimate between 60 and 100,000 a year. So it's nothing like the serpent myth.
Yeah, Amnesty International repeats that figure of 1,600 executions, but those figures don't include China or North Korea because their figures are secret.
Well, China doesn't publish death penalty statistics, that's true. But these people who are being harvested for organs have not been sentenced to death. They've mostly been sentenced to nothing. They're arbitrarily detained simply because of their political beliefs. It's mostly Falun Gong, but it's not just Falun Gong. It's also Tibetans, Uyghurs, and some house Christians.
Tell me what happens to them. What's the process?
The process is, first of all, they're blood tested and organ examined. Then the system waits for a patient to show up, a paying customer who is a match with the target victim. And once they get a match, they then inject the prisoner with some immobilizing drug. They cart the prisoner off to a white van which is near the prison. They carve the prisoner up and extract an organ or two, depending on how many customers they have waiting. Take the organ to a local hospital, and then the local hospital transplants the organ.
In all cases, does the prisoner die, or are there any living transplants where they take, for example, a kidney?
No, we certainly haven't come across any situations where the prisoners survive these organ extractions. They're basically killed through the organ extraction system, and then their bodies are cremated.
And the organs are given to what would be seen as more deserving people?
No, they're given to paying customers. The transplant tourists or Communist Party officials or anybody who has the money to pay for the organ.
How much money?
Well, when we started our work, they were actually posting price lists. There's a lot of, I would say, attempts at cover-up, and now you have to negotiate a price with the hospital, and the amount will depend upon whether you're a foreigner or local and whether you're a party official or not. But altogether, we estimate that the health system is earning between $8 and $9 billion a year from the sale of these organs.
So would you say that this is official Chinese policy run with the say-so of their department or their Ministry for Health?
Well, certainly the persecution of Falun Gong is official policy. I mean, you can hear it on the TV. They're announcing it all the time. The killing of prisoners of conscience for their organs is not a stated policy, but it's happening so systematically, and there's so many different criteria that show that the party knows about it, that it's approving it, that it's I would say, a sotto voce or an unspoken policy.
Mm-hmm. So what would you say to the statement, I think it came last year, from a former Chinese Vice Minister of Health, who said all of the organs transplanted after 2015 are from voluntary donors, and we have what he called a zero tolerance towards violations?
I would say that he said a lot of different things. I mean, if you listen to any one thing he says, you might say that sounds okay, but if you start putting together the different things he says, they don't make much sense. He's also said that we say that prisoners are free to donate their organs if they want to, and we're not cutting off the possibility that prisoners should be allowed to donate their organs. So, I mean, it's meaningless. And what's more, he is not in charge of the military hospital system, and a lot of this selling of organs and the killing of prisoners of conscience for their organs is done through the military hospital system, not the civilian hospital system.
And is a prisoner's body ever returned to their families?
No, in fact, the bodies are cremated. And there's a 1984 law in China that says you can source organs from prisoners without their consent or the family's consent. It's never been repealed. And Wang Jiefu, who you just quoted, said, when he was asked about this law, his answer was, "How do you know about this law?" It's just kind of a silly response.
What would you like to see from the international community? What should be the international response?
A few things. I think there should be no complicity in the Chinese abuse, so that everything that should be done in terms of legislation and regulation and medical ethics, so that there's simply no association with this form of abuse. I think the international community should conduct an independent investigation that's intergovernmental to go through the data that we've developed to develop their own conclusions. And I think that the Chinese Communist Party should be held to account publicly, persistently, at the highest level for this form of abuse.
They reject your report, don't they? They say it's nonsense.
They reject it, but I mean, in a very kind of vague way. They say we're anti-Chinese, but we're not anti-Chinese. I mean, if we didn't care about China, we wouldn't be doing this. They don't have anything that contradicts our figures because it's all drawn from Chinese sources. They tend to take down stuff after we've cited it, but that's not much of a response either.
You testified in front of the U.S. House Foreign Affairs Committee. What response are you getting in the United States?
The United States House of Representatives has been very responsive. They passed a unanimous resolution expressing concern, condemning the abuse, calling for an international investigation. The committee itself took Francis Delmonico and the Transplantation Society to account. They held them to account for going along and not investigating themselves, appearing to support what was going on. Some of the transplant professionals feel that they can help make progress in China through engagement, but in my view, that's an illusion. It's just giving a seeming stamp of approval to reprehensible behavior.
David Matus, thank you very much for coming into as co-author there of a report into allegations of organ harvesting of Falun Gong practitioners in China. It's 29 minutes past 6.